Ms. Hodge, would you provide roll call?
Mr. Breitling,
Present.
Mr. Steen,
Here.
Ms. Fry,
Here.
Mr. Hagan,
Here.
Ms. Haugen,
Here.
Ms. Comer, Mr. Madler,
Here.
Ms. Bollinger.
Here. Thank you. You received the minutes, the May minutes via email. Any additions or changes?
We move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. First item on our agenda, I should say the fourth item, is I've asked Ms. Connie Cleveland to come from the State's Attorney's Department here at Cass County to provide just a general overview. I've been working with Connie, Ms. Cleveland, since in my onboarding process, and we've dealt with some subpoena issues, and Ms. Cleveland has provided training to both our economic assistance staff and our family services division. And if a subpoena is to be served and that process, so I thought it would be beneficial to have her present here and talk about our partnership with the Assistant States with Ms. Cleveland, and talk about the process maybe you as a zone board member might have in that or the responsibility. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Bollinger. I'm to some of you, as some of you have come into contact with me over span of time, so I'll just introduce myself so you understand the contact that I've had with the zone, the relationship as it is currently and what we're working on. Again, I'm Connie Cleveland. I'm one of the assistant state's attorneys. I've been with Cass County since 1991, and I was with Burleigh County prior to that. When I came to Cass County, the child welfare, child protection responsibility was, as it is in most counties in North Dakota, handled just by the state's attorney's office. And the state's attorney's office often put that as a lower responsibility. Typically, you come out of law school, not a lot of individuals focus on that. You might not be surprised, but and it's not a core class either. In 1997, the then director accessed some federal funding and put a position in the social services budget to request legal counsel specifically dedicated to the needs of social services. And so at that time, I applied for and was hired to work with social services. Was also appointed an assistant state's attorney and was also appointed a special assistant attorney general to handle a variety of cases. At the outset, I sat on management, helped with personnel issues, did guardianships for adults, which is a significant issue, continues to be. Also did collections for economic assistance for the interests when individuals go into care as elderly care, and then they give an interest in their property rights but that are not liquid. So I did a lot of collections work. And then the primary bucket was child welfare. Over the years then that was a position, it increased in number, so finally we're at 3 attorneys with 2 paralegals. But child welfare became such a significant part that there was no other opportunity and no resources in the budget to continue working with economic assistance, adult services. So the focus was just on child welfare, and during that time, then I've been certified as a child welfare specialist. And also, there was a change to zones, and as part of that legislation, the state's attorneys were specifically required to do child protection, which they weren't by statute previously, and that prompted a move for our unit, both physically over to the courthouse in 2017, been over at social services in 2019, and now we are part of the state's attorney's budget. So we are no longer part of the budget of social services, no longer employees working as in-house counsel. And so we've been navigating that relationship and what it might look like, both with the state's attorney, but also with the directors. Most recently, there were a lot of changes in child welfare, and they were not, the 2 divisions were not, what I would say, working together. And that was But that is my role, and I'm very happy that the current administration is trying to develop protocols to work efficiently, consistent with the statutes, and to seek the assistance of the state's attorneys that are designated to work with the zone. Part of that then prompted Ms. Bollinger to ask me to come and just apprise you of some of the things that have been done recently, so you can kind of assess what she's doing and kind of be aware of it, but also just because it's helpful to have some additional information. This is not going to be new to some of you, but to some it might be. The zone has, as you know, different divisions, and they collect an amazing amount of information. Economic assistance collects information about income and social security numbers and family structure, but child welfare specifically has access to, because of the nature of the work, medical information, psychiatric information, psychological information about paternity and family relationships, drug and alcohol information that is otherwise very difficult to get and protected by a variety of federal and state laws. The intent was to encourage people, and as you know, people are mandated reporters with regard to child welfare, and it also alleviates some of the privilege and confidentiality for the purposes of child protection. However, there have been, over the years and in an increasing number recently, efforts to access that information for other purposes, including criminal prosecution. And I'm a former prosecutor, and I understand the desire to have that information. But also in child custody cases, so people who are not involved in the child welfare system but want information about the other spouse or child care provider, or in other cases where witnesses' information is sought from the parties. So litigation that the zone is not involved in, but people are issuing subpoenas to try to access this privileged information, not by going to the hospital or the psychiatrist, but going to social services because that information, the zone, because it's there. So as in recognition of that, and this is a continuation of a process, but it really has come to a head more recently because there's been, as I said, an increase in those requests. But what I do, and I try to keep things up to date, and so I'm frequently updating them, but one of the handouts is called Privacy, Privilege, and Confidential Citations. And I gave that to you because it covers a variety of different issues that deal with the material that is possessed by the zone in a variety of databases and accessible to workers for the purpose of primarily child protection, but there are also protections with regard to economic assistance. But most of what I have always done is focused on child protection. I provide that to you because just because the zone is a governmental agency doesn't then abrogate those responsibilities to continue to protect the material as confidential. In fact, the provision that provides 5025.1 is the statute that deals with child welfare and collection of that material for an assessment process, specifically notes that if information is released other than for the purpose of child welfare, it's a criminal act. And that's also replicated in the criminal statutes. And so it's something that's very serious, and I think that it's helpful for workers to be aware of that. But it also helps the board recognize that just because there's a bucket of information, it is for one purpose. It isn't to be handed out to other entities. However, there have been, over the years, a number of, as I've indicated, efforts by attorneys to seek that information, either through subpoena justus tecum, which is saying to an agency or a person, we want documents, we want stuff that you have, or subpoenas of testificandum, which is come and testify in this proceeding or in a deposition. So this gets us to the part that Ms. Bollinger and I have been working on, and that is providing written documents, identifying a process when subpoenas come in the door or when you get them or when someone calls and says, I'd like to subpoena you for something, how to appropriately handle that. And so the document that's titled Subpoenas is the protocol that Ms. Bollinger and I developed so she could distribute that to the agency and say, this is how we're going to handle things. just so you know, a subpoena is important. Here's what it is. Here's what we do with it. If it comes in the front door, if someone calls you, if it comes over the fax, comes in the mail, here's what we do. And that has been distributed to all of the members of her agency by her. It was developed in a working a discussion process, and it's a working document. It is something that gives us a starting point and something to turn to, because it doesn't happen every day for workers, but when it does, here's the resource, and it's also on the share drive, I believe in it. People are aware of it. I've also met with the different divisions to say, here's where it is, this is what it is. If you have questions, call me, but this is the start process. It's important. Contact your supervisor and manager, and we will deal with it appropriately. The other thing, though, that I wanted to make you aware of, and this is one of the things that hasn't happened so much in the past, it's happened periodically, but I anticipate that it might happen more frequently, and that is, as a board member of a public or government entity, you might be served. And that is the proper way, actually, to serve the Human Service Zone at this time. So I've provided this document, and I highlighted on page 3 under E why that is. And that's because subpoenas or lawsuits, but we're focusing on subpoenas here, are served or can be served, should be served, on a member of the governing board. So if someone is seeking records of the Human Service Zone, you might be served a subpoena for that information. And when that happens, I would just kindly ask you, or respectfully ask you, to put it on the top of the agenda, get it to Ms. Bollinger, because no one else will have that information, and oftentimes attorneys issue them without a whole lot of time to respond. And the policy has been, and the standing request at this time is to object, because the information is protected, and absent a court order, we, the agency, doesn't have the ability to waive any privacy privilege or confidentiality. Certainly there are methods that the information can be identified as relevant. It can be an exception to some of the protections, but that can only be done by the court. And there are some absolute protections, for example, Social Security numbers. And you might think, well, why would Social Security numbers, for example, be in child welfare cases? Because foster parents request compensation for snow pants and stuff. And in order to get paid, the check is to be identified to their Social Security number. So a lot of that is sitting in discovery and gets pushed out. And so those documents have to be, even something as simple as that, which you wouldn't think, well, that's not even necessarily what you think of as confidential information, but it very much is. And you don't want that to be distributed unnecessarily. So I wanted you to have copies of the documents that we've been working on, just to see as some sort of, so you have in hand, here's what they're doing. And because it's your opportunity and obligation to review it. And if you're thinking, well, I don't think they're doing that the right way, or I think we need something different, then to let Ms. Bollinger know, and we'll certainly accommodate that and work to meet the board's expectations. And also to just let you know if a subpoena does come in, hand it over, we'll take care of it. It's not, but do put it at the top of your agenda. So that was the reason I was here, to let you know what Ms. Bollinger is doing on those particular areas. The relationship is, I think, a renewed and enhanced one, which I personally am very pleased about, and I look forward to working with this board. If you would like that assistance, that's something I certainly can do. Mr. Burdick, Ms. Bollinger, and I are all continuing to navigate a change in relationship, and that's something that is, I think, a fantastic opportunity for us to utilize the resources that we have. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them. This is the only purpose that I am here for, so unless you would like me to stay, I will probably leave.
I have a question. In the event, let's just say, for example, if the board got sued along with the county, for whatever reason, is there insurance that would protect the board, like from a legal perspective, so we don't have to hire our own attorney?
Right, and that's a great question for Mr. Burke, but I believe you're covered by the insurance reserve fund. That's typically been how any lawsuits that have come to, because you're not a state entity, it is a because it is solely connected to Cass County and not other counties, and the Insurance Reserve Fund is the entity that Cass County associates with for any lawsuits. So that would be my understanding, but I can certainly follow up and confirm that. But, typically if there would be more counties, you'd say, oh, are we all covered by the Insurance Reserve? And I think all the counties are, but we're just Cass, so I would say it's Insurance Reserve Fund.
Most corporations would have that in place, or companies, because people can sue anybody,
Oh, yeah.
and so, as a board member, we wouldn't want to have to hire our own attorney.
No.
Okay,
And I can certainly follow up on that just to, because there are so many things that you just don't think to ask that, and then if they become important and you don't know, that is not the time to be looking. So I will follow up on that and let Ms. Bollinger know.
Any other questions for Ms. Cleveland? Really appreciated the support Ms. Cleveland's office has provided to the entire zone in my first 6 months here, and look forward to that continued relationship. So thank you for coming.
You bet. Thank you very much, and good luck. If you have any questions, I passed my card around. Don't hesitate to contact me. I'd be happy to get you to the right person. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Connie.
Yep, you bet.
Next on the agenda, Mr. Henderson, the Cass County IT Director, which I know it's a busy day, Bob, so thank you for taking some time away.
Every day is busy.
Yeah. We've been in discussions because, and in my director's report, I'll go a little bit more, but as you know, economic assistance is going through a statewide redesign with a go-live date of, in February 1st of 2023. One of the big lifts for our zone is related to IT. And I want to publicly say I appreciate all the support and the collaborative effort that Bob has provided us as we navigate this together. One of the big points is, and I asked Bob to come because he can explain it so much better than I can technically, is going towards the state tenet of Office 365. I'm going to turn it over to Bob. So I just wanted him to provide a general overview because that's really our next thing for economic assistance to kind of navigate to this process management change.
So with the state combining economic assistance across the state, they're wanting to keep all data for that being in a centrally stored repository hosted by State of North Dakota. That makes great sense since our economic assistance workers here may be assisting with other counties or other zones, and having that repository will be critical to their workflow. However, the decision that state has made for this has been to use their Office 365 tenant, which includes SharePoint, Teams, email, so on and so forth. That is an issue because Microsoft Office 365 does not play well in different environments. They're sort of their own little kingdoms, and trying to make them play together is difficult. Right now, as our Human Services Zone live every day, they have a foot in both worlds. They have our Cass County tenant, which has been around since 2012, and the state tenant, which requires them to log into one set of tools for this, one set of tools for that, and most of the time communications do get missed. As we move EA over to state more and more, having that kind of split is simply going to impact our users in a negative fashion to a much more heavy extreme, because they're going to have communication methods coming from different sources, and you never know where to look for each. What we're looking at potentially would be separating the EA environment from the Cass County tenant 100%. What I mean by that would be they would no longer receive Cass County Office 365 services, including email, Teams, SharePoint, and the list goes on. They would utilize the ones provided by State of North Dakota as their primary method of communication. Now, for us to be able to maintain working with them, we would need to set up a separate environment for management specific to the economic assistance zone. What that means from an IT perspective is a duplicate of effort. We would have a Cass County environment and then a human services environment. My technicians would be able to still support them, still assist with printers, our day-to-day computer on the desk, Wi-Fi connection kind of issues. But beyond that, with their applications themselves, we would have to rely upon state IT and state service desks since we no longer would have access to those. This will be a pretty drastic change for our users since they have been used to contacting Cass County Service Desk for the majority of the issues. And when we came upon things that were not us, we would sometimes assist with contacting state of North Dakota. Due to this change, potentially, we would no longer have any of that insight. So if someone forgets their password to log into their email, we cannot assist them. State of North Dakota would have to. It would be a drastic change, but I think we could overcome that. The other benefit this will set us up with from a management standpoint is if other chunks of the zone decide to go to these more statewide initiatives. We would have the foundation in place already to allow us to migrate those sections over to be this more centralized state managed environment. We would still maintain the ownership of the computers. We would maintain the ownership of the login they log into the computer with. We can install applications. We could help with their printers. But when it came to the applications they use to do their work on a daily basis, the state of North Dakota would have a much heavier role while Cass County steps back out of that. I can go further in depth if there's questions or if there's technical things you'd like us to cover.
Mr. Steen?
So how will this impact like inter-building, for lack of a better word, communication?
So interbuilding will be affected. For example, I would no longer be able to pop onto my Cass County Teams and directly message our human services zone. They would be in separate tenants. Now, if state would allow us to federate those so we can send between separate tenants, that is an option. However, we would have to manually add each other in. Right now, I can look for any Cass County employee, find them out of our list. This would be a manual process. In addition to that, economic assistance specifically, and if I misspeak, please correct me. I believe they are going to a call center technology through Microsoft Teams, where they're going to be taking phone calls through Teams across the state. As such, the Teams soft phone they will be using with a headset on their device would be a non-Cass County phone number. There would be no 4-digit dialing between that phone number and here. So that's an entire other aspect of it. Now, that doesn't mean to say we can't still put our Cass phone on the desk so they could call across. And now we potentially have 2 devices. In a 911 situation, I don't want to have that because we're going to have issues there, which number reports correctly. It's a definite change, and it almost makes them, in my personal opinion, a very close to a state employee in every way but the name on their check.
Thanks, Bob. This is really key in moving forward. Mr. Bregling?
What about service then?
So could you be more specific?
Well, if you have a problem, it's a state problem, are those people readily available?
State does have a fully staffed help desk. Depending upon their workload, they have been known to take a little bit longer to reply than we would like, but my department is guilty of that as well. They do their very best and work quite hard there. However, they are in Bismarck. So it's not as easy as walking across the hall and saying, I need help with this right now. That can be an issue. The other concern comes down to, we have it happen rarely, but when state facilities or state issues do happen, they rely upon third-party consultants sometimes to be the boots on the ground in this facility. So if a state physical device errors out, they either will contact my team, and if we're available, we assist as much as we can. But we have no logins, so we can't troubleshoot. We effectively turn into, please go unplug this and plug it back in. If that doesn't fix it, they either have to roll a truck from Bismarck, or if someone's working remotely and is more nearby, they could come that way. But that really depends on how far this spreads out from here. In this case, we would still be responsible for the physical equipment. That would be Cass County gear on Cass County desks. But for every software they're using, their teams and so on and so forth, would be a state of North Dakota concern.
Commissioner Steen?
You kind of addressed part of my next question. So this sounds to me like a fairly heavy resource investment, time, programming, whatever. And so who's responsible for that? I know you just mentioned the equipment. That's still the county equipment. So then you've got all the other issues that go along with implementing software. I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, whose responsibility is that from a financial and operational perspective?
From financial and operational, that would be a state of North Dakota cost. I believe that would be part of your.
Indirect.
Yeah, I always get those two mixed up.
It's indirect?
Well,
Or is that a direct?
It would be a direct cost when you have.
that's a whole
state.
conversation right now, yeah.
So that would be a direct cost from state when they are providing state level resources, such as their email. The indirect cost would be for my staff's time to assist them when it comes to Susie can't log into her email and ask for a request of assistance. If I have to send a staffer over to help, that would technically be an indirect cost. At this time, we are not tracking that down to the minute or anything we're billing back. If that's something we would have to do, that will increase our workload. To be very blunt with this, we will be duplicating the IT workload in many ways because we now have to do the same thing twice. One for Cass County, one for Human Services Zone. We get a new printer or a new security setting, we do it twice. Now, the benefit is, we would be able to have potentially different sets of rules for Cass County proper and Human Services Zone, depending how they interact with the state. So that can be a benefit, but also a much higher management overhead, because now we have to take care of two things.
Do you envision the primary responsibility for economic assistance technology falling solely on the state at some point?
That one I cannot answer. I don't know. I believe that the desire is to stay with our local counties, keep supporting our local people, and as I've been stated, to be able to advocate for our local citizenry. So that's my thought.
Really, I agree that in our directors' meeting, legislatively, if that would be brought forward, that kind of opt-in option, I don't believe that's not supported, because that would lose that local,
So that would
Ability.
make the duplication.
Well, for them
Well-
as well, the duplication will not impact them. It's impacting the counties. Now, we are in a special situation here as we are a large enough county to effectively be our own zone. Some of our other counties or other zones out there who already were multiple county entities, they didn't have a county-specific IT anyways. They would partner with NRG or other vendors. With that being in place, it's been an easier shift for them since they did not have a lot of this set up. We've been ahead of the game in many cases, and now it's sort of feels like we're being punished for it a little bit, but at the same time, we've been able to help our people out. And we have discussed with some other zones, and the rough answer they've given us is, we got rid of ours because state said we had to use theirs.
it's a challenge, because there's some opportunities, the zone directors meeting, that's on the state tenant. I miss out some things because you have to go in through an incognito window. So it really will affect efficiencies and effectiveness in economic assistance redesign. I can manage those just administratively, but how the economic assistance redesign will be designed. It's really on the state tenant of Office 365.
You have questions, sir?
Yeah, just quickly, it sounds like probably need to write some interfaces between the two systems, and is it a single sign-in log-on? Or is it multiple sign, you gotta sign in county and sign in state?
Right now or in the future, or this proposed?
The proposal is what?
The proposal would be you sign into your county computer with a county username specific to us.
Yeah.
At that point, you open your Office 365 tenant and log into that with your state credentials. And that would sign into all of your state programs. Now, the interfaces between is called federation. It is difficult to federate across completely as part of the government tenants for Microsoft. They are not designed to easily mix because of their heightened security. The other side of that is it sort of goes both ways. And I know from a security standpoint, I don't want the state reaching into our things more than they have to. State doesn't want me reaching into theirs. So finding that happy medium is difficult. The other concern is with that example, it would affect the entire county at that point, not just human services, because we are all in one bucket at the moment.
Thank you. Say a follow-up question. I know you referred to a couple of times, this is for economic assistance. What about the other departments, family care? I mean, what about that?
I see this as the first of many.
So they're gonna deal with over in that building separate systems as well. So economic assistance will be on this state tenant, but the rest of them will be on the county tenant. What a mess.
And I'm not the tech guru here, Mr. Henderson is. there is state systems already in family services, so how that's navigated, we often get emails. We all have nd.gov emails and we all have the county emails. You have to monitor two email boxes and you might miss meetings and whatnot. Ultimately, I think to interface across the state with all of our partners, because, we're county administered and our programs are state supported, it would be nice. That's been a big challenge for me to understand in these first 6 months, is how to navigate those two systems to make them work together. Ultimately, it makes it more complicated here. We're a larger zone who already had Office 365. Like Bob said, many of the other smaller zones did not have it. It was immediate. They just adopted the state tenant. So we're probably one of the only, if not the only, that has our own tenant.
A lot of them have been smaller. To answer your initial question, I do believe that from the easiest management side would be potentially converting the entirety of human services zone to this split. That is a further discussion to have, but at least then it's like for like. We have the environment being controlled the same way. With that, however, it's just our appetite here as Cass County for that, since we will accept mostly be ceding control of a good amount of the communications and things like that for our human services. Where that comes into play, building on what Ms. Cleveland was talking about earlier, freedom of information requests come through. I would no longer be able to supply those. That would have to go to state. So it's things like that we would have to consider.
Any other questions?
With the accelerated time frame on this, my staff has quite a few projects already built, but to do this correctly, we would be looking at, I would love to say 180 days to do this right, because we're going to have to touch every single device in the human services zone to make this work. So if we're trying to meet that February timeframe, a start date of no later than September would be feasible. We could accelerate after that, but every time we accelerate, it's the cheap, fast, accurate, pick two. We'll be definitely in that situation.
That goes back to the reason I asked the first question. You just said you have to touch every single device. And I asked, isn't just this economic assistance only? So what's the
To meet the timeline provided for February, that is economic assistance specifically. So you're correct. By February, we'd have to hit economic assistance, so the 1/3 of the devices.
okay, all right.
If we opt to do the entire zone to make management equal across the entire building, it would be every device. So we do have some more time to work with those other ones.
And software cost is not county cost.
Software cost is not the county cost. That does bring up a good point, however. We just signed our Microsoft licensing agreement early this year. We are locked in for 3 years, and we can't go down in our costs. So if we migrate human services zone to that, effectively we would be eating those costs. That being said, we have enough turnover in other departments and enough new hires, we could regain some of those licenses back. But there's a potential we would have unused licenses sitting there until 2025.
My understanding is last year, the state supplied laptops for most of the people over at Human Services.
We provided laptops through COVID funding. So we ordered 50 laptops through COVID funding for human services. And they took approximately
County
9
did that.
months to arrive.
But I was under the impression that when Mary asked that question, they said the state was paying for those.
I believe those were funded through a grant or some other third-party funding that came in.
Those were, the funding for that was accounted through the CARES and ARPA funds that we briefed you on a couple of meetings ago.
So
So
those are
our-
that is county-owned equipment.
Yeah, our equipment is all
That's what I was.
county-owned
follow-up question.
equipment.
And that would not change with this proposal. We would still own the equipment. We would still be responsible for providing equipment as EA or anyone else grows. The difference would come down to the upper levels of that. We still have to put a computer on the desk.
And that's the same in all zones. It's the zone-owned equipment.
So we have to, and and correct me if I'm wrong, our responsibility is to provide a location to work, the device to work and the connectivity to connect to state applications to be able to use them. That's what my proposal from an IT standpoint is we provide that baseline. Anything above that turns into a state of North Dakota responsibility. So, yes.
One more question. In my job, we have a lot of different systems, but we've migrated to a single login. And it would open up all of those different softwares, no matter what it was, versus everybody having 10 different logins and all of that stuff. And then some interface work or some training work on, we should be able to toggle back and forth.
So,
And you should be able to, you know, if it's secure, take an email from one platform and stick it in the other one without having any issues if you restrain where people can actually go.
so that is an option with Microsoft 365. They're called guest users. To make that work, State of North Dakota would have to invite our Cass County employees into their tenant as guest users and maintain access that way.
That's all you gotta do.
We have voiced that before.
Just
You're 100% right, that would work. There are some technical caveats with what guests can and can't do.
Right.
The concern there is you now have data potentially living in two separate locations that must be accounted for at the state level. So for economic assistance specifically, if they are storing data with their Cass County login in a Cass County SharePoint page, for other people of economic assistance throughout the state to store data or to access that, we would have to invite everybody else in. It has to work both ways. The easy and most secure answer is you pick one pony and that's where everything lives. And that's what State of North Dakota has done, stating, use our system, log in with your state credentials. Otherwise, from a management side, it would be a never-ending game of cat and mouse to make sure everyone has access. Now, your question about the single sign-on, that is a very particular one that is really the heart of our issue here. We set up single sign-on in a very effective way. If you're on our Cass County network and you sign into your computer, you are automatically signed into your Office 365 apps and everything. That was designed for the easiest use to our users. Well, that's with a Cass County email. If you are logged into your computer as a Cass County user and try to access a State of North Dakota, that's where it forces you to do the incognito windows because you're already logged in. The problem is there's not an easy way for us to change that specifically just for the zone without impacting all of our users. We'd effectively have to refactor the entire way we built the system for one department.
Go ahead, Mr. Madler.
I just want to kind of maybe clarify, I'm understanding. So the economic assistance is mandated by the state by February. We'll switch it over. The other ones right now are elective, and so we're just trying to, you're going to be going through the process of figuring out, does it make sense to bring everybody in, fold everybody into that one system, and then make a recommendation and looking for support or help along the way?
Yeah, basically, I mean, to be part of redesign, which we all are, it's across the state, it's how economic assistance is going to be delivered. This is the way it is. To make it efficient and effective for our workers, we need to look, the state tenet of Office 365 is how that is done. Other APS Family Services is already interfacing some, but they do that by logging in separately, like Bob was talking about. I do that by getting in the incognito window. It's not the easiest. I don't have access to some stuff that's out there, or it takes extra steps to get that. So it would be more efficient. Oh, back. Okay, more efficient to have one, obviously how it's set up right now, I can't, or our team, it's not the most efficient to get into that state system.
When I look at the 30,000 foot level, that makes sense. And once everybody has the same email address, .gov, between county, it's the same. It's just like you're emailing myself, different entities, but you're communicating because you have the platform to do so.
Yeah, right now we use our Cass County, that's our email. So yes, I can forward the .gov email, my .gov email into my Cass County. The problem that happens there is there are things that are encrypted and then I'm not able to open. So then I've elected to have 2 different inboxes, so you monitor that, so.
To me, the easiest way to think of this from a business perspective is a merger. We are effectively, state is merging our economic assistance zone into them as a sub-entity. Now, there will be some overlap, which is where we are now, while that merged entity keeps existing. But eventually it wants to take on the parent company's name. This would be that step. We would be able to still maintain and support them through the desktop and things we do currently, which honestly is probably 40 to 50% of the tickets we get right now anyways. But for that next level application where we are mostly facilitating work with state of North Dakota, that would be directly with state now.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Bob. Stay tuned for further information. Ms. Collins, can you provide just a personnel update? We're coming to an end.
Yes, absolutely. Relatively quick even. We've had some progress on hiring. We are down to 14 open positions that are in various stages. We had 5 new hire start today. We have an additional individual starting next week, and I'm hoping to have just one more yet in June. So moving along, and I'm happy with the progress that we're making in as far as personnel goes. And that's, unless there's any questions.
In the handout that was provided when you came today, there is a, just for your information, I think the second page is kind of that a monthly turnover percentage. And I think at the last board meeting, we took the FTEs out of that number that moved to state positions. So that's just Cass County Human Service Zone positions.
It looks much more reasonable.
Yeah.
I hope to next time we meet, I'll try to provide like where we're at quarterly from a turnover perspective. It gets a little wild with the months, but it does at least show you something.
Quarterly, it will, we're moving ahead and onboarding new staff. Any other questions for Ms. Collins? The director's report, I put together kind of a written report just to provide a high level. Some of that's already been discussed, the majority of it with Mr. Henderson providing some updates related to our next steps with regards to redesign. A Ransom Sergeant Richland zone, we will be in a 4-state, 4-region zone, but we are working closely with Ransom Sergeant Richland Zone to do some training of our staff because they've implemented some of these FileNet and iLinks already, so we can get ahead of the game. So it's been very helpful for our staff, and we look forward to collaborating and doing partnerships together. On May 25th, the EA unit, and I just bring this for your attention, had its first in-person. We required the telecommuters to come in person for the staff meeting, and that's the first one since COVID happened. And I have to say, it was a joy to walk in it. I mean, people say, "Oh, I haven't seen you for so long," and it was very. Ms. Cleveland did a presentation, and then we talked a lot about economic assistance redesign. But just that reconnection with the fellow teammates was really key. Family Services, our state partners, are still assisting us, although they are now having some staffing issues within CPS with their family service, field service specialists in their unit. So we're changing instead of weekly supervision to bi-weekly to help them in their transition. They have some vacancies and some deployments and things like that. Adult Protective Services, our 4 staff there, had their first statewide in-service or meeting with people across the state in May. And then operationally, I wanted to bring up and request, believe it or not, I'm coming up on 6 months here with the zone, and that is, we do a 6-month probationary evaluation at that time. So I'm looking for a representative from the board to work with Ms. Kristen Hasbargen, who's the Director of Zone Operations, to work with her in that process and myself. So I'm looking for if anybody's willing to do that, and I can share that, your name with Kristen on that.
I'd be glad to help if we need to.
Mr. Hagan, anybody else? Everybody, you all will be involved someplace. I just asked Kristen Hasbargen, how do I do this? And she said, just ask for a volunteer and she'll coordinate and collaborate with everybody on the
I've
board.
been involved before.
Congratulations.
You were involved before in a lot of this.
Just FYI, Ms. Bauman, who's the Human Resource Generalist at the Department of Human Services, provided some on-site training for our leadership team here at the zone on progressive discipline on May 25th. And we look forward to having a variety of supervisory and trainings for our leadership team here in the zone. So that was just very well received and a good first step. In addition, Ms. Collins has kind of designed a zone orientation for new onboarding of new team members to the zone, which I think has set a really good way to welcome new members in. So thanks for doing that, Heather. And another thing you may hear about or will continue to hear about, but Mr. Corey Peterson, who's the director of CFS at DHS, came to our zone director meeting in May. And children, my understanding, in July of 2021, the law changed, new Juvenile Court Act, there was a law change. So as it went from unruly children to children in need of services. Children in need of services, as of August 1st, will be referred to zones to provide that intervention or assessment. So at the May zone directors meeting, there was discussion because no zone probably can internally take on that amount of cases. So there will be a zone-led CHINS team, meaning 8 to 10 FTEs that will be spread across the state, and the Richland RSR zone, Ransom, there we go, is taking the lead. So Ms. Flight, the interim director here, is taking the lead, and Agassiz Valley, Ms. Jacobson and myself, we are going to collaborate, because the majority of cases, CHINS cases, of course, are in this region of the state. It's kind of fast-tracked. The positions have been advertised. They'll be RSR employees, but that does not mean they will be housed there. We may be housing some might be remote, and there will be one supervisor.
So
Yep.
the description of these children in need, Chin, how does that differ from the rest of our foster kids?
These are ones coming through the court. My understanding, like runaways, tobacco kind of referrals, caught with cigarettes coming from schools. So when I visited with juvenile court, these are more unruly than delinquent necessarily. So it might take a education component that CHINS worker might be doing a letter, maybe meeting with the family and saying, here's the resources to go out and meet, and this is why smoking is bad. You, parent, take your child here.
So that's a group of 9 employees throughout the state?
It will be 8 to 10. Yep.
And the reason I ask is that we have another issue on the agenda later on, regard to unaccompanied minor refugee. I don't know if you're aware of that.
That Agassiz Valley has
But
that.
they want an office here in Cass County. So, because
Separate
most of those
program.
individuals show up in this area as well,
Yep.
okay? And then I read an article on Saturday that we have a shortage of foster homes for kids in this area. So how are we gonna accomplish all of this? Is there a plan out there that says we're gonna increase our foster care accessibility by what percentage to accommodate UMR, Chin, and everything else we're getting, plus our regular foster.
I'm not as familiar with UMR, but I think those youth are already housed, for lack of a better word. The
They're looking
Chins,
for housing.
yeah, the Chins referrals are already within the juvenile court system. And then they wouldn't be foster care placements for the most part. They will be more working with that education component with the
I'll
family.
I'll read you the paragraph I have. So this is from Agassiz Valley. Our newly expanded services includes the administration of URM, an unaccompanied refugee minor program. URM is a federal program that serves eligible and approved refugee youth. There is a federal agreement between the state of North Dakota and the Office of Refugee Settlement to provide these services in North Dakota. Agassiz Valley is one of 15 programs in the nation that administers this program. The closest neighboring program is Michigan. North Dakota DHS partners with Agassiz Valley in the delivery of this program. The URM program is part of the North Dakota DHS Refugee Coordinator Division and has close coordination with the North Dakota DHS Children and Family Services Division. As a point of reference, the URM program mirrors domestic foster care whenever possible. Culturally sensitive placement services are at a high priority for this program. So they're not currently housed. We're bringing additional people into this area for foster care
But not through our foster care system,
in the area.
yeah.
So is
Yeah.
that a separate foster care system that
You know,
we
I-
should be coordinating?
I can't, Kim would be the best person to answer that. My understanding with unaccompanied minor refugees, that has to be in place before they can be placed. But I'm not, like you're saying, Commissioner Steen, it might be.
I'm just curious because I
Yeah.
read this article and I read this article and I read Chin. We've got shortages now in this area. So we have additional challenges. I just haven't seen any solutions. And part of this group is advocates for our constituents here. And so how are we gonna take care of everybody in this county if there's already a shortage? I don't know, that's my question.
Agassiz Valley is the human service zone, right?
Correct.
So LIRS is no longer,
Is that, did it used to be LIRS?
it used to be LSS.
LSS, you have the,
It's
URM
not a part
program.
of the contract with
No.
LIRS.
no.
It's a separate agreement between the state.
And now.
And now Agassiz Valley.
Oh,
Agassiz
Agassiz
Valley.
Valley, who indicated earlier that they place most of their individuals in this area.
So, oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, I'm-
So a quick question on that though. So when they're saying unaccompanied minors, are these, let's say, US citizens are bringing in, or is this a different faction?
The refugees.
Their children.
Well, I
Refugees.
understand that. When they say refugees, are they through the refugee process?
Yes.
Or are they being bussed up here? Are they unaccompanied
It
minors?
says they've been vetted, they've been through
They're
this, they've
through
been
the
through that,
refugee
whatever. So
process.
that's what it says anyway.
That's what I know of the program in the past.
And
Mr. Wilson?
Historically, they haven't been large numbers of people.
So I'm gonna ask one more question.
Yep.
So do we have enough foster homes currently in Cass County?
Foster care licensing now went to the state, so I know they're going through
So we
all
don't
of
know the
those
answer to
workers.
that.
Yeah, right.
So and since it's
Their
going through the
recruitment.
state, it's none of our business.
We're always
No.
in the recruitment.
We're
process.
always in recruitment.
We're way short, always.
Right, I get that, that's my whole point, Commissioner Breitling, is we're very short. But now, are we doing something to solve that? Because we're bringing in more challenges as we speak.
Not to the foster care people.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah, we are.
as a
They're-
total,
These
we
are
are.
private placements.
Also our foster care. This is not a private placement.
Foster
This is-
care is not a private placement.
No, this program does not appear to be a private placement. It's bringing into the, treated like,
That's
Foster
not
care.
my understanding.
well, I don't have an understanding, that's why I'm asking the question. Because I don't understand it.
Well, we're
And I'm
getting-
not familiar, I
Okay.
don't know the ins and outs of the URM program.
I don't either.
I would expect that they're not using foster homes that are recruited by the state.
They're
They're
not.
probably family placements or relation. I can find out a little bit
Very
more
good.
about that and get it out to all of you.
What's her name is going to be speaking before the commission this afternoon.
I know, that's why I'm bringing it up, Commissioner
She should
Brightman.
have the answers to most of them.
I thought maybe because foster care is part of our mission, that we would know something about that as well. But that's all I'm asking about.
Mr. Olson?
What I would add to this conversation is where I've been involved with it, and as you say, the conversation that we're going to hear from the Agassiz Valley Human Services Zone Director at our commission meeting this afternoon at 3:30, is that they have a Agassiz Valley program that is already up and running. They have a number of employees that are currently working 100% remotely, most of them living in the Fargo area, meeting with clients in the Fargo area. They reached out to Cass County simply asking if we had office space that they might be able to reach out and engage in a lease agreement for. So we did a tour through an office suite over in the basement of the courthouse last week. Just said, does this on first blush look like it might be something that fits your needs? It did. So we have a agenda item this afternoon, really is looking at the office space component of it. Is that something that we as a county feel like we're not currently utilizing that space? Would we want to consider a lease agreement with them? Now, interaction of, a community-wide need versus resources, all great questions, but as it was originally brought to us, was really a office space question.
That's the surface of it. That's what we have to deal with. And the reason I'm asking again, in Kim's letter to us, our newly expanded services include the administration of URM. So I looked at it as a new service, but that's what I'm asking. So and this comes on top of Saturday's call or the paper Saturday and Sunday or whenever it came in. And then now we got Chin coming in to play, and they're probably a different type of foster care.
I don't think that will impact
at all.
at all. It is really through juvenile court and the change in that law, and it's really education, letters, just those sorts of things.
We have right now no issues we need to worry about with foster care in Cass County zone.
I wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't either. That's why I'm asking the
We're
question.
we're sort of volunteer foster care.
Not even volunteer, they're paid.
Well, but they have to
But-
volunteer in order for us to
I
pay.
get it.
But I think there's more than just that
They can't
shortage.
be- They can't be hired, without their willingness.
Well, I'll see.
I got a couple questions on that. I've talked to Holly a number of times at the state level on refugee resettlement. So on this part of it, this is unaccompanied minors. Do we know how many are allocated to come in? Because in the past, when it was LSS, some of the challenges were daycare. Nokomis had a bunch of them and, unaccompanied minors. And who pays for that? You know what I'm saying? And the reimbursement and all of that stuff.
This would be, I'll have to get information from Ms. Jacobson because I don't have the questions. It's not a statewide zone program. It's Agassiz Valley. Like, we're not all implementing URM.
But it like Rick was saying, it's going to impact the ability to take care of the Chin or whatever the other kids are. But it'd be nice to know, are they bringing in 200 a month, or is it 10 a month, or is it?
I'll reach out and get some
You know,
information.
and then figure out where does the funding come from? A lot of times it's been Office of Refugee Resettlement. But it'd be nice to just understand the daycare and how it's funded.
These are older youth. I know that. Like, they're not,
They're not little kids.
they're not little,
And most refugee programs are federally funded, not state or locally funded.
Is this what, federal?
I believe
We
so.
don't, the state doesn't fund any.
It's just,
Okay, we're coming up to the end of our time, so
anyway, that was just
one
I
thing,
wanted to get at.
One thing I wanted to address is the first Monday in July is July 4th. So I wanted to throw out there and ask a request. Do you want to meet on July 5th? Do you want to do the following Monday? Or do you want to take July off and meet the first Monday in August, which is August 1st?
The county does the 5th.
The 5th?
We will shift all of our normal first Monday of the month
the-
meetings to the
okay.
Tuesday, the 5th.
Does that work for everybody, Tuesday the 5th? Okay, we will do that. Motion,
But I'll be here.
okay. Because the 4th was a holiday, like,
Yeah, we'll
so,
be here because we have our.
okay.
I got one more question on that kid deal. You know, in my past, I've been very connected in with the school systems. ESL money, where's that coming from? I would assume they don't all speak English. So where's that coming from and how is that being funded? Are the schools having to pay for that or will they be reimbursed? And maybe there's other people. You know, because I just think get it all laid out, because if there's counselor demand in schools, anyway, you know.
I think we need to adjourn.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'll say.
Thank you.